What we've found through the course is that we're solving the scared nature of building in super remote locations. So typically Waiheke Island, Great Barrier Island, Ahipara, there's nothing in the urban environment. Lake Tekapo, Central Otago, Marlborough Sounds, it's all tough places to get to. When clients have a property like that, they know as soon as they start to engage trades, architects, it's going to start to get expensive pretty quick. First period on site, we were doing foundations. It was awesome, 4 days, and then we had 6 inches of snow.
What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Better Builder. Now, before we kick into it, I have a little wager with my producer, Dan. He thinks that I should be asking you to click that subscribe button, like right below this video. See that little red button and you just click it? I believe, on the other hand, that just because I'm going to ask you to do it, I don't think you will. So we have a wager. He believes you will subscribe by me giving you this message. I believe you actually won't. So if you want me to win that wager, I suggest that you do not click that red button. If you want Dan to win, then click it, okay? And let's face it, you're not here for Dan, all right? You're here for me and the guest that's about to come on. So make sure you don't click the subscribe button. Isaac, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a different setup today. My back got injured. That's why I'm sitting up straight. So if I'm not sitting up straight in the episode, make sure you let me know to get the posture right. So this is a lot more intimate, right?
Yeah, nice.
Do you ever, apart from your wife, do you ever sit this close to another man?
Try not to.
No, thanks for coming on. We're just talking off air a little bit about family and phones and working on the phone constantly, how difficult it is, right?
Yeah.
To not be on your phone all the time. Kids know.
Yeah, they know. They're smarter than we think.
Yeah. No, it's just very interesting. I was just saying to you, like, my little 8-month-old notices when I'm putting the phone down, he like follows the phone because he's like, Dad, that thing Dad has in his hand must be very important because he's carrying it everywhere. He's always looking at it, and that's not good.
No. No. My example was daughter wanting to play in the evenings or take me to her room to show me her toys, and she'd make sure that the phone doesn't come with us. She'll take the phone off me. No phone, Daddy. Put it up on the kitchen bench.
My goodness.
That's the wake up.
Yeah. Makes you think those times, eh? You're just kind of like, okay, wow. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I've been obviously following you on the IG, and just wanted to see what you guys were up to. I was like, you got to come on the podcast. We got to have a chat about pre-built homes. Some call it prefab, some call it modular. Everyone has different connotations. We'll talk a little bit about that. But talk to me a little bit about how you got into the game.
Yeah, so it's MakeSpace itself is 3.5 years old now. Prior to that, I've had quite a sort of different intake into a building and design company. So my background started initially in landscaping at a university. So I wasn't made for university. Did 6 months, figured out it wasn't for me, had $300 in my savings or something, and had always been around tools, and Dad built our first house, and various family members have building and construction companies, and I thought, I'll go give landscaping a go. So spent my last $300 on a little set of shitty tools, and managed to win a little job, and one thing led to another, and did that through the rest of my sort of, well, I wasn't at uni, but when friends were at uni, I'd just be doing that for a couple of years. And then on the back of that, my ex-girlfriend at the time's father had a sawmill, so then got a role in that, developing a cross-laminated timber panel. So it was quite a shift. I would have been 23 at the time, jumping into the sawmill. I'd worked there in school, just stacking timber and as your summer job, and then came back into this new division, which was called Laminata, and just had the opportunity of a lifetime to be involved in a new product that had really good backing, a strong business behind it, not necessarily a clear direction with the new product, but we knew what we wanted to achieve. So we developed our own plant, commissioned all the machinery. A lot of it was built in-house with our own engineers. And
Wow.
So we were a good 2 or 3 years in product development, which was invaluable at the time, just a young guy learning stuff and operating machinery. And
Yeah.
And then putting it into systems. So then we developed a fencing system out of it. We got it into Bunnings. So then the role shifted from product development into sales. And that was another huge, valuable series of years. Bunnings was our sole distributor throughout the country. So we'd be having meetings with their buying teams and getting the product established in 50 stores around the country. And so kind of got an MBA in a whole lot of different sections of the business, which was really valuable.
Would have been a lot more valuable than going to uni.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for my situation, 100%.
Yeah.
I sort of sat in uni and would do, can't even really remember now, but it was sort of 5 or 6 different lectures, and I probably found one of them interesting, and the rest I kind of couldn't see value in for my life. So, on the tail end of that product, we were developing a modular low-cost housing system. This was all done out of Sawmill Mount Pukaka in Kerikeri.
Yeah.
And developed a really awesome series of simple, cost-effective houses. And that's, for me, where the spark sort of kicked off. Got really interested in, and I mean, I was lucky enough there that there was a big facility and we had huge warehouses and the whole shebang. But it sort of, clicked the interest, and my interest went more to architectural and nicer level of products and really considered spaces and how you can structure a functional 2 or 3 bedroom house in a tiny footprint that might only be for 80 square meters. And you'd go round and round for days not even days, months on getting that configuration right and getting every little space right.
Yeah. Were you quite entrepreneurial? Because for someone because I remember when I was young, it was kind of the same thing. You kind of go, what has the least amount of friction? What's the easiest thing to get going right now? And it's kind of like mowing lawns or like doing some edge trimming or something like that. Was that sort of like an entrepreneurial side of you that came out early? Now you kind of look back, do you think?
Yeah, it definitely was. I'm lucky enough to have awesome people in my life. Parents always had their own business, and my mentor at the time, who was the owner of the sawmill, was invaluable for a huge portion of my life. 10 years just learning, and he's dealing with situations and problems and things that are massive on day to day, and just to be able to sort of air and ask little questions here and there, and as things progress, be involved in it, and the learning's just hugely invaluable.
Okay, so the background was almost more like product development and engineering and design rather than like swinging a hammer.
Correct. Yeah, but had a full practical understanding of tools, and I can jump in with the guys at work and happily spend a week or 2 on the tools with them, which was just another really valuable early on lesson. But then I've just been lucky enough to have segments of kind of everything throughout to give me a bit of a rounded approach to it, from operating machinery to dealing with staff and customers and suppliers and the whole realm that comes with the building company.
And how long did it take you to kind of figure out like what you're very good at? We talked a little bit off air before around the fact that I could do like 2-3 podcasts in one day, and because I just like love having a yarn, right? Because it's my sort of something that I enjoy, and whatever. Everyone's got their zone of genius. Everyone's got their zone of what things they're good at. We'd cross over like what are you good at? What do you enjoy? And what can you make money out of? Right? It's the golden where it all comes together. Venn diagram. What are you good at? And how long did it take you before you started to figure out like what you kind of have skill in and talent in?
Yeah, I think it was a series of things. So one I feel was design. Surprisingly, I don't put myself as much of a creative person, but when I start to get involved in a project, I get a bit obsessed with it, and then it's obviously working with people around me to bring it in. But I taught myself how to develop floor plans on the computer, and I guess the skill I back myself with is just giving it a go, giving it a crack, jumping in, whether it's the deep end or not, and just figuring it out. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you're always learning something. And through the process, that's sort of been a way that we've built our business to where it is now, is giving things a go and going into something pretty open-mindedly. I mean, some of the projects we do now, people probably think would be impossible to get a house to, but we figure it out. And that's sort of my passion, is figuring out the biggest problem and how we can do it effectively. And then once you get to the end of that, that's where the satisfaction kicks in.
It's funny how that word like creative, because I think we've given ourselves a bunch of titles, and then there's like a bunch of boxes, and then some boxes you don't want to jump on, because especially if you're a dude and you're like work with your hands and you're like around like engineers and da da da, and then for someone to be like, hey, Isaac, you're quite creative. It's like, shut up, no, I'm not. Like it's kind of weird, you don't want to, especially as a young guy. Dan, who's this producer, he's probably like freaking angry now because he's a creative. But which is not an insult, Dan.
Compliment.
Yeah. But like it's funny, because when I was young, in my late 20s, I picked up a camera for the first time, and then my wife, now was a friend then, said to me, how long have you been taking photos for? You're very creative. And it was like the first time anyone's ever said that to me, right? So it is kind of a weird thing to kind of get your head around. There might be some things that if you're not trying it, you may not even know that you're actually quite good at it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. So you kind of started to get involved in different aspects, and I guess because you worked in that company, and it was your girlfriend at the time's dad, right?
Yeah.
So he probably gave you a little bit of special, he probably saw something in you and gave you a little bit of extra mentorship, right? So he started probably giving you a bit of rope to be able to kind of dip your head into different departments.
Yeah.
And so is that where you started thriving at the start? Is really in that sort of like...
That was pretty well where it started, yeah. I sort of had accumulated a pretty broad set of skills, and at that point knew what I really wanted to do with creating a really design-led product in residential houses. So reluctantly finished up my role there in 2020, I think it was. And by that time I had been probably spending my nocturnal part of life developing this new business. And lucky enough, a couple of friends of mine at the time were wanting to build a new house up at their beautiful property in Northland. And I thought it was the perfect opportunity. It was one of those showstopper sites right on the coast. They were awesome to work with, and knew it was just going to be something good. So trusted my gut. We got into that on just a cost basis. So it was just an open book deal. There was nothing in it for me. Other than obviously what became from it.
Yeah.
But for that year of time, it was leaving Auckland on a Monday morning at 4 o'clock, driving up there, which is 4 hours north, and then spending Monday to Thursday, sometimes Friday. My parents live up in Kerikeri, so I'd stay with them, and then coming back down. We obviously had builders up there as well and everyone else, but it was a...
Wow, so you were kind of just like, okay, this is going to be my flagship. This is going to be the thing that launches what hopefully would be a new company, and I'll just do it at cost.
Yeah.
At what level were you at when you left that other company? Have you guys already at the other company developed like some concepts, some designs? Like, were you already like comfortable in building a home, a pre-built home, or?
No, not at all, actually. We were in very much prototype phase at the previous company, and my primary role in that was our systems with Bunnings. So I was more sort of just sitting on the sideline and being interested in the other stuff, and not necessarily directly involved, but certainly passionately involved.
So that was sort of at research and development phase, the home, that sort of stuff. Okay, that was sort of slowly boiling in the background.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're good friends of mine who were building the house for us, so I thought, it's going to happy to do a deal with them, and I know off the back of it we'll get something awesome. How we get to that point, I didn't necessarily know, but I knew we could do it. So it was really just getting started, chatting with an architect, putting pen to paper, and starting the process.
So were you single then? How did you live?
How did I live? I just met my new partner, who is now my wife, and I was living in Auckland for the weekends and driving up to Kerikeri for the weeks, Monday to Friday, which to be honest wasn't that unusual because my previous role I'd do a similar thing, driving up. So it was that carried on 7 or 8 months driving up, but then we had a lockdown, so I had 3 months where I couldn't be there, which is probably the hardest part of the project. By no means am I a control freak, but I do like to be on site just so I can spot and keep a record of what's happening and stuff that's being done. So that was hard, but end of it we got an awesome result. Beautiful house that got picked up in some magazines, and it gave us good content to launch the brand with, and authenticity that, hey, these guys are actually doing something not just generating renders and putting a pretty website up.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how we've tried to always operate. So then from that launch, one of my good friends at the time was helping me get everything established. He was a proper creative and really just assisted hugely through that process of starting with floor plan functionality. He actually taught me to do the floor plans on computers, which now led to being hugely valuable with clients nowadays. And so we got that launched, MakeSpace was born, and yeah, through a whole bunch of other things, here we are 3.5 years later with a half decent business. Still very early days, and we've got huge aspirations and more things we want to do, but we're really happy with our sort of progress so far.
Yeah,
on the
I'm very
journey.
interested because generally when we get people on here, they have 10 years plus business experience. But I have, I'm very interested just in like the different elements of differentiating yourselves. There's a lot of builders, they work, they get qualified, they have aspirations of going out on their own. As soon as they go out on their own, they start looking around. Like we were talking before off air of like how you look around and you just see utes and vans and it's just like ABC construction and like this building company and this, like renos and this villa renovations. There's just so many like builders and construction companies everywhere. How do you differentiate yourself? So, this is like a great kind of like way of, and I had those guys from Homework on as well. How do you differentiate yourself from the market? How can you productize potentially your skill set? How can you, especially when the market's tough, you got to think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
So with your business, so the first project, did you guys build that offsite or onsite?
We built 50% of it offsite, so we got to pre-line phase offsite and then delivered it to site. Just being the first project, I'd never moved a building with trucks and cranes before, so I had a little bit of apprehension, but that was just a safe way to do it before we put all the cedar cladding on it and huge joinery suites on it. Didn't want to get them damaged in transit. So yeah, we sent it up 50% complete. Lots of learnings, and in hindsight, we could have easily, got it to 80%, 90% complete.
Right.
But it was
So you
just a safer bet.
Yeah, like limiting your risk,
limiting the risk.
Yeah. All the expensive things start moving around.
Yeah.
And so, so how did you guys have like a yard or did you have a warehouse that you guys hired close by? Where did you guys end up building?
So at that time, I was building in my parents' they had a nursery up in Kerikeri, so they had a spare section of car park that I just set up camping with our builders. And then on the back of that project launching, we got some pretty good uptake. And within the space of probably a month and a half, we established a yard in Christchurch and a yard in Auckland, just to facilitate the particular jobs we had on at the time.
So you guys build it in a yard. You don't have to be undercover or anything.
No, we've got some undercover portions,
right.
But sort of through my learnings at the previous role at the sawmill, it was all about your cost structure. So my mentality from that into this has been lean and mean. Just get only what you need through it. So then when we hit times like we did last year, everyone can just tighten up their belts and we can weather the storm without having to make huge sacrifices. So there's no glitz or glam in our facilities. It's very much a building site, but our advantage is most of our projects are super remote. So we have, and currently in our sites, we've got our joinery company just down the road. We've got our Bunnings on the corner. We've got everything within a stone's throw.
I want to talk about that in terms of the supply chain and like the efficiencies of all that. Firstly, why we talk modular? You mentioned before modular sometimes have a negative connotation because there's some building companies that's gone under and the classic put up the renders and then don't have the backing or whatever and they go under. And then obviously prefab seems, it's almost like underselling what it is because it just seems like some school classrooms or something like that, where you guys like to be, position yourself as pre-built, which I think is smart because the average, I was thinking like, what's your ideal client going to understand the best, By the way, I want to say also to builders out there, it doesn't help when you put renders together and throw it out there. Like it doesn't give people confidence. It doesn't build trust and connection. People sometimes think when they put even on their website and stuff, they have like a bunch of renders of like projects or whatever, even completed projects, and they have like renders up there and stuff. Like, I think it works against you rather than for you.
I tend to think
That's my
so.
opinion.
Yeah, I feel like for us, it's always been that authenticity factor.
Yeah.
You got people who are coming to you spending $1 million, $2 million. Like, they want to know that you can actually build a nice house.
Yeah.
And that you've built nice houses and got happy clients. And
Yeah.
for us, it's always been don't get me wrong, we've done renders in the past and
You've got to sell the dream.
sold some dreams.
But in terms of like just having your website full of renders, like it works probably against you. So in terms of going into that pre-built space, and even beforehand when you guys were working on it at your previous role in the mill, what problems were you solving? That's what I want to know. Like why build off-site and transport? Why build it that way? What problem is there in the home building and construction and general home supply market that you're solving through that?
What we've found through the course is that we're solving the scared nature of building in super remote locations. So our projects are typically Waiheke Island, Great Barrier Island, Ahipara. Like there's nothing in the urban environment.
Right.
Like Tekapo, Central Otago, Marlborough Sounds, it's all tough places to get to. So when clients have a property like that, they know as soon as they start to engage trades, architects, it's going to start to get expensive pretty quick, because just to get to site might be an hour and a half's drive. Just to get a delivery of timber might be $400 just to get it there. So we kind of identified quite quickly that that's our niche.
Yes.
And then as time went on, we just sort of solidified ourselves more in that niche and how we can add real value for clients. So what started out as sort of 30 to 60 square metre, 1 to 2 bedroom holiday cabins turned quickly over the course of probably a year and a half, 2 years, into more like 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom homes. And as people saw the advantages, so that's naturally where we've ended up, also on purpose, because we know that that's where we can add value to someone building their home. Yeah.
And how has it evolved? Like, I assume is it just like kind of Lego, like, or a few, matchboxes that you kind of put together to build a house, or has it evolved in terms of design and customization for these type of clients?
It's it's sort of a two-pronged thing. We've got our building side and our design side. So it's quite unique in the sense that when a client comes to us, we start the process there with a general inquiry, being, hey, I've got a property in Tawanui and I want to build a house there. And then from there, we take it right through design, engineering. We manage all the consultants, turnkey solution, start to finish. We installed septic systems, water tanks, driveways. Having that approach gave a really, well-rounded turnkey vibe for clients, and enabled us to then build on our product range. So, like I said, starting at a smaller cabin, building into some slightly bigger houses, and now it's bigger modules. So our biggest module is 150 square metres currently, and we can, 2 of them quite quickly makes a 300 square metre house, getting 4 or 5 bedrooms. Or if a site's difficult, we might use a series of smaller modules. So we might use a 6 by 3 metre module for a site in Great Barrier Island where we've got restrictions of access, and so then we truck them in and clip them together, and it's a bit more of a process, but it's still more effective than trying to get builders out there and trying to get materials out there.
So let's talk about some of the challenges. Like, what are some of the challenges of building in your way? I mean, I assume transportation. I assume there's some, there's hidden costs from a client's point of view in terms of the groundworks and, septics and organic water and all that sort of stuff, power. Talk to me through some of the challenges and then how you guys sort of have been able to kind of overcome some of those.
Oh, I mean, the biggest challenge from the start was logistics. So getting these things from A to B was something I hadn't done before, and was pretty eye-opening on our first project. Our first sort of project in Auckland on a really tough site. We lifted up a 30-metre bank in the middle of Waiheke, and we got the truck stuck on a corner for 2 hours and had to dig out a bank, and the crane got stuck. It was a 2 or 3 day period of my life that I'm happy not to live again. But again, figured it out, problem solved, and then on the next one, knew how to attack it. So that problem quite quickly became easily resolved just through working with the right companies, knowing what you're doing, and little things like check the forecast.
Big gust winds and all that sort of stuff. Raining.
Yeah. Gusts of wind. We had a project where it was a beautiful day, got the units 20 meters up in the air, and then the wind came in big time. Oh, no. And again, just a moment where thankfully we had a process where everyone knew what to do to get the building tied down onto the piles that were sitting there, just so we could weather the storm as such. But it's every site has its own thing and its own problem. It's just about, I guess, being educated and just having a plan in place and timing it. And
so you guys use like the same suppliers in terms of transportation, probably, I assume.
Yeah.
Is that like quite a gung-ho like kind of industry, or is it quite a sophisticated? They know what they're doing. Most of those companies.
Yeah, on the face, it seems really gung-ho. I remember when we first transported a bigger unit on a house truck, and nothing was a problem to these guys. And I was just like, how are you going to get around that corner with a 20-ton building on the back, or up that hill? And then, but these guys have moved houses around the country. It was just another day for them. So that gave me real confidence. And it was, for me, at the start, it's always a cost exercise, right? You get 3 quotes and you go, oh, that one's cheaper, that one's middle, we'll go somewhere in there. And then as time went on, it went, yeah, but these guys don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And it cost you 10 grand in mistakes. So quite quickly, we worked out the people we needed to use. And now that the jobs run smoothly, like we delivered a 180 square metre 4-bedroom to Great Barrier. Took about a month of scheduling to get everyone lined up. We had about 12 trucks, crane, 3 barge trips to organise. So it was quite a process. And having the right guys, the right crew went perfect. Do
you have to deal with any like traffic, transport, Auckland Transport, or when you're up here, or like council or anything like that? You need to like let anyone know what's up?
No, there's limits. So we try and design, like for example, your max height's 5 meters from bottom of barrier to your apex of your roof.
Right.
So we try and keep everything under that, because as soon as you jump out of that, it just becomes more complicated. And then we can go up to 7 meters in width, pretty easy.
Yeah.
So again, we just try and design everything to be under that.
I've talked to a lot of people, and also like watching, it was like this show as well around like relocatables. I don't know if you saw that show. A New Zealand based show.
Houses, yeah.
Yeah, like moving like villas to like, those sort of that type of thing. And it was just like the cost. It just seemed like the cost of transportation was like much higher than people anticipate. Why is it? How much would it cost to transport a house from, say, to Waiheke Island, which is just like an island off Auckland?
Oh, obviously depends on size of house, but if we set a standard, we're delivering one in 3 weeks to Waiheke. That's 3 bedrooms, 140 squares, and all up that costs us about 120 grand to get there, get it landed, barge hires, everything else in between. But then the flip side of that is it's a 2-storied house, so we're doing some on-site works for the lower story before the house gets there, and organising trades and getting people out to do that side of the work. Whilst 120 grand seems like a lot of money, you can quite quickly get the efficiency out of it.
Right, yeah, because of like reduction in labour costs and all that sort of thing, yeah.
I mean, even just, if you're getting a crew to go over from Auckland, they're getting probably 2 hours, 3 hours less a day of actually work time. You got $60 ferry return trips. You got, unless you rent a house, but even that, I think we're renting one there for $900 a week at the moment. For the guys, it's just, it's
quite expensive to rent on Waiheke. Yeah, like the rental market's quite high there.
Yeah.
And even I think property also went like tripled in the last 10 years on Waiheke, like with the average house there. So it's a good market. But okay, so even though you're spending 150 grand on transportation costs, that's still more cost efficient than getting a bunch of guys out and building on site.
Yeah. We're from what we've done to date on the islands, for example, we're saving about $800 a square from us going there and building it conventionally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of IP in there. Are you able to share square metre rates and stuff like that you guys see up there?
Yeah, so for conventional build?
For conventional build versus like what you guys do?
Yeah, so conventional on the island for a like-for-like project on what we're doing is between 9,000 and 12,000 a square house cost. So we're doing turnkey solution. septic, water tanks, driveway for about 9,000 a square on average. It works out at. So I guess for a customer, they know from the start that that's what it's going to be. We've never had a job overrun our fixed cost, unless it's a variation. We're pretty skilled now in those costings and how we can make a good job.
And that includes everything, right? And so I know there'd be builders like listening to this, especially in Australia, being like just falling off their chair or driving their car off the road, hearing 9,000 a metre. But that sort of includes groundworks and all of that as well.
Yeah, it includes everything. Yeah. And that's what I call not necessarily high spec, but it's certainly really considered nice finishes.
And then
nice
how do you, because I guess if you're talking to like the end user, like the mum and dad that's building this thing, right? They'll go to it's always harder because it's not like for like, because you go to like a GJ or something like that. They'll always it will always be from like slab up square meter rate, and it will always be like with like the lowest of the lowest fixtures and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's always hard. I've always even when I was involved with my building business, it was always the hardest thing to like explain to people like for like comparison.
Yeah,
because they just sort of like they might it may just be a phone call or conversation, and like, you guys are really expensive, but they don't understand what it includes.
Oh, totally. And it's the consultancy, the design, the engineering. Now
that's a big call as well. This design as well, and the consultancy engineering. So you're almost going to have to like figure out a way of like say, okay, if you remove all of those, so it's more like apples for apples when people compare it to another.
Yes, our website, which has our build costs. So it's two parts to the processes. We have our build cost, which is typically 5 to 5 a square meter. Yeah. And then the other side of the business, which is the turnkey solution, makes up the rest of that figure.
Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah.
Like 5,000, like that's pretty good.
Yeah. And I mean, someone might spend, $100,000 on a louver system or $100,000 on a deck. And then a driveway, and then quite quickly things add up.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly. So I was just like, so people don't sort of like fall out of their chair.
Yeah. Sorry, build cost alone is 5 to 5 square meter start. Yeah.
Who are your ideal clients that you're working with at the moment, or typical clients that you're working with at the moment? You're saying remotely. Are they sort of who's out there like getting? What's the breakdown of your market? Compared to like the guy getting a small little thing of as a secondary home. Versus someone building like a 6-bedroom.
Yeah, it's we've noticed in the last 6 months our demographic has gone more to. We've got a lot of expat Kiwis who might have land on Waiheke or wherever it may be that are looking to move home and want a solution that's a fixed price and nice design, and so that's part of it. We've got the boomer generation or my parents' generation who are wanting to build their holiday home or finally build their dream home for their retirement. Yeah, we're getting a lot of that now, primarily remote locations again. And then we're also getting into an accommodation solution. So last year we delivered our first one in Lake Tekapo, which was 6 self-contained cabins for a campground there.
Oh yeah, I saw that,
which, again, the reasons behind building off-site and transporting to was, just to give a good example, is we had 3 weeks on site in total on that job. The nearest trade shop was an hour drive, hour 20. Builders who we contracted to help out were an hour drive one way to get there. We had first period on site, we were doing foundations. It was awesome, 4 days, ready to pour, and then we had 6 inches of snow. We had all our holes cave in, filled with sludge.
That doesn't work, with foundations, having snow in there.
No, it did not work. So it was, just a few little examples like that of just how difficult it would be to build conventionally there. And then for us to come in and just have that for 3 weeks at a time and notice it was pretty eye-opening. But that we're finding is a really interesting direction. So it gives us quite a diverse clientele of the person building their private batch or family home, which we love doing, but it's definitely a lot more intensive. You've got more emotions at play, and this is what they've might have saved their whole life to do. And for my role, I've got to be on that whole job. I've got to be on the phone till whenever it is.
Part-time counsellor,
whatever it may be. And don't get me wrong, I love it. It's great, but it's harder work than a commercial project, which is
and harder to scale.
And harder to scale. Yeah. We've found that private market we do 6 houses a year. for that, and that's perfect. And then if we can chuck in a couple of more commercial type
Yeah.
clients to substitute that.
So give me an idea, just selfishly. So I saw those ones, kind of cool, like kind of like a little, almost like little units, like a few in a row, right? Is that the ones I was looking at?
Yeah.
How big are those, and what would be the cost of those?
Those were 27 square metre for the single bed and 32 square metre for the two bed.
Yeah.
And we delivered those on average. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but they're 200 grand a cabin delivered, roughly.
It's very interesting, because the sort of short-term market's still there.
Yep.
Even the Airbnb market, Booking.com and all that, you can connect all
Yep.
those things, right? The average person can really generate a lot more income from short-term rentals.
Yep.
So that is a really interesting investment opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's been we've had farmers come to us, and their accountants have recommended that they don't put the money in the farm and put it. I mean, currently dairy price is really good, so it's a bit different. But previously it was, put your money into this passive income of 100 grand a year and pay it off in 4 or 5 years, and
Done.
something else to do and done.
Yeah.
So that's been really interesting for our business and our model, and it substitutes the residential side really well for us to have that. And again, we're doing the whole turnkey, so we've got our own in-house contract architects, we're designing everything, we're engineering everything, start to finish in that process too, for that 200 grand or whatever it is per cabin, as an example. So for the client, that particular one lives in Auckland, he can't be down there all the time managing staff, and so it's a pretty attractive.
Yeah, it's a good
proposition.
solution. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of research around that. I'm kind of interested in all that sort of short-term rental space as well. And what's quite interesting for Australia and New Zealand markets is that, and I know it's very popular in Australia as well, just because of there's a lot of land, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for people to do that. The trend is a big trend, obviously, to being very like off-grid. Go for a couple of nights, chop your own wood, like having that feel, because we're so connected to our phones, to have that feeling of like roughing it, but like glamping sort of thing. There's a big market. And then also what's quite interesting is as the economy sort of shrinks a bit, which we are in a shrinking economy at the moment, it's those people that would have, like, say, booked a holiday to Bali or Fiji or gone to Hawaii or to the States or gone to Europe or whatever. It's those people still want to do some form of traveling, so they end up traveling more locally. And then that means that even though to some extent the short-term rental market, like the Airbnbs, have been affected, it's still kind of buoyant because of those people kind of just go locally. Yeah. So you definitely end up, so it's very interesting. Okay, so because I think that's from an investment point of view, I think people are very interested in that side as well, how much that costs, as a creating a good investment on that as well. So give me the structure of your business right now. So how many guys have you got working there? Do you how many people in the office? How many people on site? Do you guys use a lot of contractors? What's the structure at the moment?
Yeah, so we our sort of core crew is built up of 3 or 4 contract builders in each site that are full-time contractors, and then me and my wife in the background doing the other side of the business. And so our model is very contractor based. Everyone is contracted to the business. Yeah. We employed a whole lot of people prior to the last downturn, and for us, just felt it exposed us quite a lot to when we had times like we've just been through or are still going through. So for me, it was a big lesson in just rein in costs where you can and be a bit more agile, I guess, because you have to suit the market. As tough as it is, and as much as we want to have everyone on the books, at the same time you've got to be realistic and protect the business and protect yourself. So we've found the contractor model for us works really well. The guys, whilst they all work for us Monday to Friday full time, they've got a bit of their own flexibility if they want to go and pick up another job for a week or help out a mate or whatever they can. Yeah. And then we've got a contract architecture firm that probably works. He's got probably 2 people full time on our projects, and then the rest we just pull in when we need, and when we don't need it, push it out.
Yeah. I found this a lot of the Australian builders I talk to, they're a lot more comfortable with that contractor kind of mentality, because like you can kind of scale faster or shrink faster, or like it's a little bit less risk. Where I feel like in New Zealand, it's a lot more employed. Which is kind of just like a different kind of way of doing it. Yeah. But I like it, especially when you want to, for cutting your risk down. yeah, you kind of may miss out a little bit on that sort of cultural aspect. But like you say, if they work full time anyway, you have a bit of that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good way of doing it, especially for your structure. So what do you do? What does your wife do in the business?
So my role is kind of everything from start to finish. So I'll do site feasibility studies where we go out and meet with clients. I was Queenstown last week for 2 days, Tawanui Friday, Matarangi Saturday, Great Barrier Tuesday. So my role's very much on the move, primarily sales, which is sort of my natural skill, I guess. And on the back of that, I project manage and run everything essentially until we sign a contract. And then we've got a head project lead in each site who then takes on a job from consented plans through to completion. Obviously, I'm in the background wherever needed. But primarily my role is sales, consenting process, compliance process, material spec to make everything super clear.
Yeah.
No room for ambiguity or anything, and then hand it off to our super skilled team of builders and they complete these projects. And then my wife is graphic design background. She pulls together all the project imagery and websites and brochures and documents. And what we've found from that is that's where our sort of value and perceived value starts from. So we're super transparent with everything we do. We've got our build cost pricing on our website. Every different example layout, we've got a build cost next to it. So a client can go on straight away.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Eh? Why do you guys do that? Because I like it, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just kind of find that interesting because it's like, is it immediately gonna? I know it's very transparent, but is it immediate? Like the uneducated person, are they going to come on? Maybe it's going to straightly put them off. They're going to compare apples with oranges. Like, what was the reasoning behind putting your pricing on your website?
It's for us. We found from people who engaged with us off that, our conversion rate was super high. So once we get someone to a site feasibility study, we've pretty well got 90 to 95% conversion rate on that. And we found the more transparent we are, the more customers appreciate it. It's not like we'll say, oh, this build's going to cost X, and then we come into our site feasibility study and all of a sudden the build cost has gone up another $100,000. There is always stuff that people add on, but we found that by doing that, by the time they got the proposal, they kind of knew what to expect and they don't fall out the chair. Whereas the flip side of it, giving a low ball starting from price and then getting your site proposal done and then submitting a cost that's 30% higher than what they're expecting, then they fall off the chair and our conversion rate would drop. So for us, it was kind of just a natural progression, I guess. And also you get, the inquiry level is big and you don't want to be spending a whole lot of time on someone who's not got the budget or not actually wanting to spend that. So it kind of naturally sifts out the weeds as such and gets real leads in front of you.
Okay, so it gets rid of the tire kickers. I assume you probably have a lot. Yeah, you'll probably have a lot more lead flow than an average builder, just because it's like an interesting proposition. It looks amazing. It visually, people. There'll be a lot of people. There'll be a lot more tire kickers. People that just have some land and they're like just sort of inquiring and just checking. Wow, dreaming. A lot of dreamers, I guess. Very top of funnel people would probably reach out. So, okay, no, that's super interesting. Okay, and so your wife works and she makes everything look amazing as well. So obviously you guys have a really good brand. How important was it, and what difference do you think it makes to have like a really good? Because I talk to builders and they kind of just go like, "Oh, mate, people choose us because of quality and we do good work and it's all referral and it's all good." But like from your point of view, how important is it? How important has it been for you guys to have a good brand, good digital presence, good socials, and so on?
Oh, it's invaluable. I mean, it's something that was never my natural path, but from what my wife Beck's created, I can see the real value in it. So we'll be she will be designing a brochure, and we'll be running through ideas and right down to the wording and the placement of the words, and she's just in that level of detail. And I'm sort of in that level of detail with our builds, but from this aspect, it's just as important because the clients, that's the first impression. That's how they're going to immediately judge your authenticity, I guess, as a company. And it's kind of that example of the iPhone, right? Like it's does the same thing as a whole lot of other Androids, but because it's got the sleek and the sexiness and the literature behind to back it up, and people are more interested all of a sudden. And we've noticed a very similar thing. So we put huge effort into, getting projects nicely photographed and videographed and making sure that those projects are really heroed throughout our various channels. And for us, it brings in the right demographic that we're looking for in our clients as well. Again, not necessarily that we don't want tire kickers. Sometimes the least expected client turns into an awesome client. Yeah. But it's kind of just owning our space. We're not the cheapest option, but we know that we can deliver an awesome project, super considered, fixed price, and you'll love it for years.
I absolutely hate it when I get interrupted while I'm in the middle of watching or listening to a podcast, so apologies. Just need to remind you of my wager I have with my producer, Dan. He believes that by me telling you right now to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, that you'll do it. I, on the other hand, don't actually believe you do it. I don't even want to ask you, to be really honest. So in order for me to win that wager, please do not hit that subscribe button, okay? Don't do it. Back to the episode. Yeah, I think it's so important, and having your ideal client in mind when you're kind of pulling it all together. So I think you guys have done a really good job there. So you're, 3.5 years in the current iteration, right, of MakeSpace. What are some of the... Give me an idea of some of the biggest business lessons that you've learned, maybe that easy or hard way, over the first sort of 3.5 years. You're looking at guys just starting yesterday or looking to get into business. What are some of the things you would have done differently if you could?
The big one that I've found is having people that you can just lean on, people who are more experienced and weathered a few storms before you, and bring a different, not necessarily builders or architects who are older and more experienced, but just people who you get along with and you can shoot ideas with and get feedback from that's non-biased, I think is something I'm finding now is really valuable. And also just don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. I mean, I'll still jump in our deliveries and go and spend 2 weeks in Tekapo with the boys working 12-hour days to get it done. But it's in those parts you learn the most, because you're learning how can you be more efficient, where are you bleeding money, what processes can you put in place to make sure that the little mistakes don't happen again. And especially when a business is young, I think that stuff's just invaluable to be in it and actually seeing it firsthand, as opposed to, someone calling you up and being like, oh, hey, we had a mistake happen here, and by that point it's already happened and it's a bit far gone. And
yeah, because I had John Crichton on like maybe 3 weeks ago, and he was also, he's sort of scaled his business very well to the point where it sort of runs without him. But then he said lately he sort of jumped in on a few sites and then realized like, oh, jeepers, this has kind of changed a lot since I was last involved in this, and there's heaps of more efficiencies that can be created. That just the fact that he jumped in every once in a while
super valuable.
Opened his eyes significantly. So I guess that's probably a good piece of advice for people that's been in the game a long time. That you could jump back in here and there just to kind of see. And then leaning on others, I guess, is really good too. I guess thing with builders, like a lot of builders I know now, they might not all be the same, but they probably spend a lot of time just in their own head, and not a lot of time having someone to kind of bounce ideas off. And there is that element of like ideas, they say ideas have sex, and then that creates a new idea, right? And you're just sort of like in your head, bounce your own ideas bouncing off each other. It's not quite the same thing, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a benefit to doing that and catching up with people.
And I mean the big one and the most logical one is get your costs right. Have a system, have a process, and make sure you get your costs right. Because I mean, especially for fixed price contracts like what we do, the risk is with us essentially, and we have to make sure that we don't have blowouts and we don't underprice anything. So I mean, that's the big logical one in its most simple form, is get the simple stuff right. But then having the people jumping in every now and then to just refresh yourself. I mean, last week I jumped on a digger down in Queenstown for 3 days and set out the site and drilled the holes with the guys, and you just pick up little things that you could be doing better, and organising sites, and it's all helpful stuff.
I've also talked to a lot of builders who they sneakily do that as well, to upskill the guys and just kind of set the standard as well. Like they'll come in and they're almost like pretending, that they're coming to help out, but they're not really coming to help out. They kind of like they kind of come show the guys like the pace that they want them to work and the precision they want them to work at. And they upskill a few guys along the way. And that's more about that than it is about, and maybe even a little bit morale building as well, rather than just actually helping out. They don't really need you to help out necessarily. You can just get someone else to come.
I'm the last person they want there, but
but
it's I mean, the other thing for us is because we're setting out a site and then building it in Christchurch and delivering it to Queenstown, craning it in, and when some crane days we're running at 50 grand a day with trucks and cranes, and if we bring that building down and those piles aren't right,
so it's good to have that connection.
Just at least I know for my own.
Actually, like those things need to like drop down perfectly. Sort of measure twice.
Or 3 times.
So your business is essentially a COVID baby. And you run fixed price contracts. So the next logical question is, what do you guys lose money on any of those projects?
No, I mean in our first year and a half, we definitely learned a few lessons. I think we lost money on 2 jobs, and the rest we run on pretty lean margin.
What's the most you guys lost on a project?
Our first job we lost 42 grand on, just purely because of naivety and transport and how to get stuff there. The building itself was fine. I mean, that's a known part of it. But it's at the end of the day, it's just a really good lesson. And it is 40 grand. It's a lot of money, but at the same time, it's not life ending or business ending. So we just took over the course of that year and figuring out different bits and pieces. We just got our cost base better. We have provisions in for certain things, like if it pours down with rain whilst we're delivering, that's totally out of our control, and we just have a provision in there. Just so clients know, if this does happen, we're not necessarily going to throw it all at you, but it's part of the game.
And what do you guys have? What sort of contracts do you guys run, and how do you limit your risk profile through your contracts? Do you have any extra clauses, or do you just use like a master builder? What sort of contracts do you guys
we're
have?
just with NZCB, so we just use a generic contract through them, and then we just have a few of our own specific clauses for what we're doing, and then on each one we just work through the client. Sometimes they pull stuff out, sometimes add stuff in. It's a super transparent process. Again, because we own the process from start to finish, it's a lot easier to set the standard of that relationship at the start. They don't come to you with a set of plans that they feel like they've spent an absorbent amount of money on and they're already a bit deflated. We kind of control the narrative from the start with our clients. And as soon as we see that they're starting to stress out about their outdoor landscape budget or something, we can quickly go, okay, pull it in. Let's remove that for now. You can do that in 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is. And just, nurture, massage.
It's a lot of that, eh? And in terms of your sales process, so when people come see you, they have their site, is there any sort of like pre-commitment? Like, do you do like a prelim or anything like that? Or is it pretty much just like you price it up for them for free, and then how does that process work?
So our site visibility is $1,500 plus travel. So it's we by no means make any money off that site visibility. But what we know it means is that when someone parts with $1,500, they're pretty serious about wanting to do something. So we'll come to your site, run through it with you, work out all the consultants you're going to need, septic, water tanks, whatever else it may be. We go away. Typically, I'll just sketch up a floor plan of what I think they want while it's fresh, and then meet with our architect. They produce a concept plan, and it typically probably costs us about $2,500 per job. But it's a sort of a point of investment for me where I know that it's 9 times out of 10 it's going to pay off. And it's worth it. And it's not too much to sort of scare a client off, but it's just the right amount for us to know that they're serious and we're not going all that way to waste time.
Yeah, it's great, because it sort of gets rid of the tie kickers. It also shows you that they're not now like talking to like 3 other modular companies or, you know what I mean? So they're kind of committed to the process a bit.
Exactly.
At least to the extent of $1,500.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you can cover some of your costs. I mean, because generally what's the alternative? The alternative is you spend $2,500, you get nothing, and then they're not committed, and then they just move on. Thanks for that.
Pretty much.
and you kind of, there's kind of like an element, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. There's like an element of like, you teach people how to treat you. Like you kind of, you sort of like train them how to treat you through kind of what you allow and the standards you set and the boundaries and so forth, right? And I think that a lot of builders I've talked to, and they probably would agree, you know, they don't set that expectation right, so they get sort of walk straight as, okay, cool, calm, we'll price all the stuff up for free, we'll do all this extra stuff, we'll organize this, that, and the other, and we do like all this consulting, and we'll and there's no expectation set, and sort of from the beginning, the client just starts to like walk all over them. And
and it's 100%. And it's really understanding that client and being able to be involved from the inception of the idea through to the design phase, through to getting into the pricing phase, is, like I was saying before, it's just understanding that path of what the customer's doing and going through and how they're feeling. And, you know, as strange as it sounds, it means that we can adapt as we go through that process and make sure that once it gets to end of design, the client has what they want, but also something we know is going to fit within their budget, as opposed to me coming to you with a set of plans and you going pricing it and the client's going, oh, it's, you know, 300 grand more than we want to spend. And
you're being the bad guy.
And you're being the bad guy for no reason, right?
I know. Builders get they just get kicked, eh?
In
terms of the sales aspect, we don't talk about that enough. What are you? How deep do you get with the sales side? Like, is it just about, you know, when clients come and see you, how important is it to really get a good understanding of why they're building the home, the deeper, you know, the reason they want? Because obviously the completed home is not the end. It's the end goal for you, but it's not the end goal for them, right? Like it may be for another for the purpose of something else, right? It's a stepping stone to them getting to their desired outcome. How important is it to know their desired outcome? How important is it to know what their biggest fears are around the build? How, like, do you write any of that stuff down? Like, what sort of, do you interview them when they come see you, and what questions do you ask them, and what sort of helped you and, you know, get them across the line?
Oh, it's understanding what they are trying to achieve, not just in the building, but and how they're going to use it. Are they bringing their grandkids there, or is it a place just for them to get out to? Do they like sitting outside? Do they like sitting inside? Do they like sun? Do they like shade? So it's getting that overall understanding of how they're going to use the house is what we've found is really valuable. And you've got to get relatively deep with a client to get to that point. Again, you know, we'll do before we catch up in person, we'll do like a Zoom call or whatever it may be, just so I can get a face-to-face and kind of understand what their non-negotiables are, what they'd like to have, and what they don't want to have. So understanding your client is so crucial, and what their expectation is at the end, and also how you maintain that expectation through a build process, which ain't easy. It's a process, but if you can understand what they're trying to get to after the house is built, once the landscaping's done, once the trees are in, I think that makes my job as the design and building company a whole lot easier, because any decision that gets made along the way, I know that this is ultimately what they want. So let's make that decision based on that outcome.
It's easy just to like put that on the out, because obviously you have the design and construct side, but, or, you know, productize. But a lot of builders, they may just work with architects, and it's very easy to just go, oh no, that's what the architect focuses on, you know, because that's what they build their design around. But even as the builder, I think it's really important to understand your client, because even if you're like if it's somewhat of a competitive, you know, tender process, or they're kind of looking at you and maybe one other builder or whatever, them feeling like you really get them is going to make a very big difference, right? In terms of getting you over the line. Someone feeling like, this guy understands my needs.
And you might just not get along, right? Like,
yeah, exactly, as well.
And there's been times with us where we've had meetings with client and we might just not gel. And for me, I can see pretty quick, 6 months time, that's going to be, you know, hard work for both of us. And you're better at that point just to part ways.
So is there like how many touch points do you want to get with your client before you ask them to like sign a contract or sign the prelim or do you get them to sign something when they do the site analysis?
No, so it's so typically there's probably a series of 20 emails before we sign a site visibility, and then before we do the feasibility study, there's a phone call or a video call, just so I can get a bit of a run up, I guess, as to what they're going to want. And then it's as simple as us just issuing an invoice. But at that point, we know sort of 60, 70% of what they want. And then from there, it's getting to site, seeing the site, understanding how the building's going to sit, where it's going to sit, and then just ticking those last few boxes for them. So there's a lot of touch points through the process.
So there'll be, before you send them through, because they don't sign anything, right? It's just like the invoice.
Yeah.
So before they get the invoice, how many touch points would that be? So you like talk to them, like how many times would you?
There's probably 20 to 30 touch points before that. Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's incredible, because like a lot of builders would be, they'd get like an inquiry, they jump on the phone, meet them on site. Hey, sign this. And it doesn't quite work like that, right? It's got to be a little bit more massaging going on throughout there.
Yeah, it's a bit and that's where we find having really detailed literature for our products and having super clear pricing. We developed these brochures for each of our standardized floor plans we had, and we had the build cost, and then we had pages and pages of upgrades and how much it was to add a wood burner fire, how much for a heat pump, et cetera, et cetera. But again, that stuff just helps, because even though the touch point side of it's more, how many bedrooms do you want? Where do you want your living? Do you want an outdoor area? All those things are important, but at least in the background, they also have this other document they're referring to that probably takes away another 20 or 30 touch points for me.
100%. It's almost like just having like props and having assets to kind of like, it's just constantly like just reinforcing that you're the only logical company to go with, right? It's just that constant. I remember even back in the day when I was involved in sales and used to work for Colliers, and it was just like having props and touch points made a big difference. Like sometimes we would even, this is not exactly the same as this, but we would even be, when I go pitch to sell like a big building or development site or something, I would have like this little book that didn't need to be printed out, but it was printed out, and it was like a spreadsheet, and it was just like names of like developers with their contact. And I'd be like, and I would get it out, and I'd talk to them and say, yeah, so this is the strategy we would do. Obviously, here's a list of the logical buys, and I'd pull that thick thing out and just sort of open it and just flick through it. And it was just like names. It didn't mean anything. But what that did is it just sort of showed that client like, this guy's got a lot of buyers.
Exactly.
It's like, and it's just thinking about those little ways, and it's not about tricking people or anything. It's just about demonstrating your value in a way that's sort of like physical, that can kind of see. So for you, 100%. It's kind of like just showing all those extra parts around. You want a fireplace? Like this will be an extra cost, and here are the options, and it gets them more engaged and more excited. I don't know why people don't have more, like a lot of builders I talk don't have anything printed, anything that they can leave with a client. Like it's so valuable,
it is. Yeah, it really is.
Just sort of helping them push them across the line. In terms of your business currently, are you looking to scale, and how would you scale? Like how would you buy your time back? Because obviously you're very heavily involved in the pre-construction phase. What would be the next logical way to scale? Would you have to get someone to come and take some of that stuff off your hands, or do you want to even scale, or is it just about working on getting more quality projects? What's the next sort of goal for you guys?
There's a bit of a balance there, and we're still certainly figuring out the finer details of what sort of our 10-year or 15-year plan is. But our scaling plan for our business is not necessarily developing bigger sites in our Auckland or our Christchurch branch. It's more having scattered sites. So we might next open one in Wellington or Whangarei, but from what we've learned, keeping the sites small-ish and having one lead guy and not a whole lot of staff in one site, the jobs run better for whatever reason. I mean, there's just less things going on and less people there, and so. But at the same time, it's our the thing we struggle with throughout projects is we are super passionate right to the end, and we deliver this nice house, hand over the keys, and then you're done. and you kind of, we've added a lot of value through that process, but ultimately the value's in having the project yourself. So our next step is, how do we get into doing more of our own projects? Yeah. Whether that's to hold and rent, or whether that's just to build and sell. We've identified that we're really good at building in hard places, and we add a lot of value in that, and we save money in that. So for us, if we can be doing some small scale developments of our own. That's the North Star as such for what we want to do, as opposed to just building 30, 40 houses a year.
Yeah.
And also because it's just a skill set that between my wife and I we have. She's really good at interiors, and I can get the building there, and it's something that keeps a more simple business, and we can get balance with our personal lives and our professional lives, but something also that is creating more value. And it's something the old man's always said to me, is always just make sure you're working towards building assets as opposed to just, building houses and selling them and being done.
Yeah. Smart.
So that's sort of our longer term plan, and how we get there. There's a few roads to get there, but it's certainly not scaling our house building side of it hugely, because ultimately you lose quality. And also New Zealand is a small market. It's a tiny market at the end of the day. And we noticed it last year, when the tide goes out, it goes out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And to be able, for us just to be, if we need to, we can mothball a site for 3 months, 6 months, doesn't matter. Our cost base is low, and it's easy to do. Versus if we had a big facility and, then start tightening up and things get a bit more freaky. So, we're getting in the groove. We really like our model where we're at now. We've got an awesome crew in each of our sites. They deliver job after job, top-notch stuff. Our clients are always really happy. We get good referrals. So for me, it's kind of like we're in a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Why ruin it? Let's just keep doing what we're doing, but think how we can add real value down the track with what we're doing. Yeah,
you're talking about business life, personal life. You've obviously got like a little 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old. You got another one on the way.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
In the thick of it. How do you navigate that? Give me some practical elements, and maybe you haven't got there yet, but what are some practical things that's helped you to be able to do business well, do dad life well, husband life well? Or is there a way of doing it well, or is it very difficult?
Oh, it's totally difficult. And everyone's different. For me, I've only sort of just started coming into a bit of what I call balance with my work and personal life, especially now that I've got a young one that's past the infancy phase and is more interactive and requires more attention. But I've always sort of measured it off 4 or 5 things in how I feel I'm balanced at the time. So it's always my family first, work, friends, and personal health. So if I can try and keep all of those in kilter, life's pretty good. But I mean, through the last couple of years, the fitness has gone out the window, and you forget how much that benefits you. I got into it recently in December or something, and straight away, you feel just so much better. You go into a day feeling like a rock star compared to, feeling a bit shit in the morning and getting your coffee and rolling on. So for me, it's keeping those 4 things in balance, and certainly work has been the sort of 70 or 80% for the last few years. So trying to now even out the keel a bit has been something just personally that I've had to work on, because I know that that's what it's all about really, is spending time with your kids and nurturing those relationships, and just as much hanging out with your mates, going out for a beer and having a catch up, and they all bring such different elements of happiness to your overall life. So it's I guess in a nutshell, that's sort of how I try and measure where I'm at any point in time. Not sometimes you have to plow your time into work, or sometimes you need to plow your time into your family, and it just all comes at different times.
Yeah, for
usually
sure.
when least expected.
And have you, do you have any sort of routine habits or anything that you do that sort of help you, like in your morning routines or night routines or anything like that? Anything practical that really helps you?
Getting into a routine has been the hardest thing I've found. Now that I've identified that I need to sort out the balance a bit more, trying to get up at 5, go for a run, then get the kids' lunch ready, and then go to work. Like just getting in that routine. I was saying earlier that we're going through the last 5 months of bad sleeping with the little one. So we're up at 1 o'clock, up at 3 o'clock, and then the last thing you want to do is then get up at 5 and go for a bloody run. So it's getting in that routine. And like for the last few months, I've had 2 really good weeks, and then I've jumped off for 2 weeks and had a couple of bad weeks. And it's, you can't hang yourself out to dry just because of that. But it's just trying to hold yourself accountable and getting in that routine. Because once you're in it, it's easy, right? Like you go through phases of your life where you'll go to the gym or whatever 4 or 5 times a week, and it just seems easy.
I know. When you go to the gym consistently, like I did my back and stuff, and I've been bad for like a couple of months. But when you go to the gym consistently, you kind of go, how can you not? It's like, how can people not go to the gym, man? I need this. You kind of look down on others a little bit. You're like, oh, look at them. Look at that fatty. Like, why don't they just go to the gym, And then just like, it's so easy to forget.
It is.
And then when you become the fatty, you're like,
this
is so hard. You're like freaking eating like chips
good.
at 11 o'clock at night and stuff like that. I'm like a night eater, right? Like, I don't know what the deal is. Like, if you catch my eating during the day, it's like, man, how's Brad so fat? But if you catch me after 9:30 at night, just what's in the cupboard?
Snacks.
And I know, right? So I don't know what the deal is with that. I need to sort that out. I need to find a counsellor or something. And then how's the mental health? I hate that word, but like guys kind of, I don't know. I hate saying this, but like guys kind of find it hard. There's a lot of guys finding it quite hard. It's quite hard out there at the moment. When money is a bit harder to make, and like shit, the GST bill's coming again, and the tax bill is coming again, and you can only tax pull your income tax for so long, and guys are just sort of like, a lot of guys struggling out there. How are you finding it? What are you doing that helps? What's your POV?
It's for me, it's always just little steps. Like you get something daunting, whatever it might be. We had an example last year, the day before I got married, we lost quite a big contract. And, I was pretty gutted, and it was such a happy, nice time in life. And then, but the reality of that is you can't sit and dwell on that sort of shit. You gotta take some small steps, go, right, okay, what's step 1? We got to work out the crew situation because we've got 6 months of work for a crew. How do we do that? Then step 2 is once you figured that out, then, okay, now how do we bring in some more revenue? What can we fill in with? And, things have a funny way of just working themselves out. But if you're not proactive and you don't start that process, nothing will change, right? So I've found that just doing little things every day progressively improve. And the mental health side's a tough one. Like as guys, we're generally closed books. I'm one for internalizing, and on the flip side of that, I've got a wife who's the opposite. She'll tell me how her walk was in the park and stuff on that day, which I love her for. But it's opening up that communication, whether it's your wife or your mate or your mum or whatever it may be. I think it's just starting that conversation, because as cliche as it sounds, as soon as you start, then you can actually start working on it, improving it, and learning.
What are your thoughts on, because your wife's in the business, right? And I always find that very interesting because as a husband, dad, man of the house, you're kind of part of your job is to like shield the family from stresses, shield the family from, back in the day is like shield them from the tiger running into the village. But now it's more like shielding them from the stresses of life and financial stress and all that sort of stuff. How do you, if your wife's in the business, I assume she has access to the books and she can see what's coming in and out. How do you do that?
Oh, it's we've got I feel our setup's quite good. So she's very much a mum first in this part of our life, and then MakeSpace involvement second, and her role is very parted,
almost like compartmentalized.
Compartmentalized, yeah. So her side is purely what she does and the design and the graphic and that side of it, and then I take care of everything else. So she's not having to, obviously we communicate about everything, and I tell her everything, and we work through it, but she's not sort of firsthand having to, she doesn't get the email from the client saying, hey, we're going to postpone this job for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I get a little bit of time to digest that
Yeah.
before I then go and
Yeah.
say, hey.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, I always just find it interesting, because like I've been in sales a long time and obviously in business, and had a joke with my mate the other day. I don't know if I've said it on here, but like the joke was kind of like 50% of your time is spent on convincing the client to work with you and that you're the company to go with, and that they're going to have a great result and to give you some money. And then 50% of your time is convincing your wife that everything's going to be okay. We're not going to go under.
Yeah, we're going to be good.
Yeah. So you got to be a salesman, 50% each way.
Yeah, totally.
And I've always found it interesting when wives work in the business and they across the finances. Like, I mean, my wife's very good with finance and stuff, but like, there's got to be some element of you kind of shielding the family, So I always kind of find it very like interesting, So, hey, we're sort of running out of time. We are running out of time, not sort of. I could chat for another 3 hours, I feel, in terms of all these elements of your business, which is super interesting. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I guess my last question would be, did you have fun?
Awesome. Yeah, really nice. And we were saying earlier, it's something in the building industry, whether you're a builder or whatever it may be in the trades, it's just having a space to chat, and something I really enjoy on my doom scrolling is seeing this stuff pop up, because you're getting insight into someone's life who does something real similar to what you do, but might have a different view on it, and it's valuable, and love what you're doing.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And where can people find you? Just MakeSpace website,
MakeSpace website, yeah.
IG,
Instagram, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And any way, anything you guys looking for at the moment? Staff, business, capital. What's your biggest challenge right now?
We're actually in quite a sweet spot at the moment. Last year was tough. We're coming into some really good stuff this year. So our sort of focus now is just continue refining, settling the ship from last year, and coming into these new jobs with really good systems. So eventually we're looking probably in 3 months to bring on someone to help in my role. Not 100% sure what that is yet, but most likely sort of compliance, because at the moment, a huge part of my job is dealing with councils and compliance, and we deal with 10, 12 different councils on any one day, and it can be pretty
It's
brutal.
a lot of soft skills around there.
Yeah.
And then also, we can talk about it off air, but quite a good opportunity for you guys in the spec space is like joint ventures with landowners and things like that, which I'm assuming you guys are already thinking of, because especially just that, reducing that risk from the capital side.
Exactly. And the great thing is having like product that, when someone settles on a site, they can at the same time be building a house, possibly, and have that consent and settle, and house goes on.
100%.
Into it. Yeah.
Love it. Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Isaac.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.